Let them go. He loves me so much that I'm sure he'll give it to me. There's nothing special about it, Kelly Reed told her friends as they sat at a local bar and drank mojitos. It will only last 6 months, and there's still a month left to smooth out all the rough edges, and then we'll get married and be together forever. The 4 women who were to become bridesmaids in 7 months began to grumble. Wow, baby. It really takes you to the extreme, you know? Even if he loves you as much as no man has ever loved any woman, said a tall blonde named Annie. You ask him to give you permission to kick him in the balls, and then you come back with a smile. Yes, Jamie is the best girl. Why do you want to do this to him? I wouldn't hesitate to stay with this man, said a brunette named Karen. I just feel like I need to do this, for myself, before I get married and stay with one man for the rest of my life, Kelly replied. I've only had one boyfriend besides Jamie. I think I need more experience, more men, before I tie the knot with just one man for the rest of my life. Why? Jamie's had so many women that you think you need to catch up? Annie asked. Actually, Jamie says he's only had 2 women besides me. So it would be good for him too, Kelly said. But why have you been waiting until now? Rosie, a stocky, cheerful red-haired girl, asked. It wouldn't have been a big deal if you'd done it before you got engaged. And now, yes, yes, yes. It looks like you want to jump into a pool filled with shit. Yes, I could have chosen a more appropriate time, but we are not married yet. I think I deserve it. I think this will make me a better partner for Jamie in the future. It has nothing to do with Jamie and me as a couple, Kelly said. You will become a better partner. Has Jamie ever complained? The 4th woman, another brunette named Helen, asked. No, but wouldn't every man like to have a better partner? Kelly started to reply, but Rosie interrupted her. Not if it meant that he would have to sit back while she had such an experience with other men, Rosie announced. But at the same time, he could gain experience with other women. He wouldn't sit idly by, Kelly countered. Have you ever thought that this could be the beginning of the end for the 2 of you? Helen asked. I've thought about it, but have you ever seen someone more in love than Jamie? I'll be surprised if he doesn't cry with relief when I tell him it's only for 6 months, and eventually we'll get back together to get married, Kelly said. Well, if I have the right to vote, I'll vote for you not to do it, Annie said. I don't see anything good in this for Jamie. God, I'd kill for a great guy like Jamie. You all know that all the guys I dated couldn't compare to Jamie. The 4 other women at the table nodded in agreement with Annie's statement. So when are you going to destroy his world? Helen asked. I thought tonight would be the perfect night, Kelly said. It's Tuesday, so he'll have 3 days before my first date. Wait a minute. Stop. Stop. Have you already set a date for Friday night? Rosie asked. Well, nothing concrete, but hope doesn't fade, you know? Aren't we having a bachelorette party this Friday? Kelly asked. Jamie Breyer walked into the house he shared with his fiancée that evening and smelled his favorite dish, stewed meat with baked potatoes. At least for the 1000th time, he thought to himself that he was the happiest man in the world. Jamie and Kelly have been together for over 4 wonderful years. They met in their freshman year at Michigan State University and fell in love with each other from the very beginning. He was fascinated by the fact that this blonde could be as cute on the inside as she was beautiful and curvy on the outside. She was fascinated by his boyish appearance, curly dark brown hair, athletic build, and a strong, calm confidence that she did not find in anyone else's age. They both thought their love was like a fairy tale, love at first sight, which seems to be getting stronger every day. He asked her to marry him on the day of their graduation. She agreed without hesitation. Besides Jamie, Kelly had only one other boyfriend. Besides Kelly, he had only 2 other girls. Their lack of experience became a kind of connecting link as they experimented, studied, and laughed together, starting with the 6th date. Kelly was sitting in the living room, drinking wine, when Jamie found her. Jamie seemed nervous when he approached her for a routine welcome kiss before going upstairs to change into casual clothes. He noticed that Kelly was still in her work clothes, which was unusual for her when she returned home. Jamie, baby, why don't you have a drink and join me before you go change? I need to tell you something, Kelly said. Jamie saw the serious expression on Kelly's face and did as his fiancée told him. He suggested that something bad had happened during Kelly's time at Transglobal Shipping. Jamie sat down on the other end of the couch from Kelly. He took a sip of Irish whiskey and, not for the first time, wondered how people managed to make whiskey so tender. He stared at his fiancée, who fidgeted in place. Jamie, I have something important to tell you, and I need you to listen to me carefully before you ask any questions. Okay, Kelly asked. Jamie nodded silently. He was too worried to speak, wondering if his fiancée was ill. Kelly brought down on Jamie's life what was tantamount to a nuclear bomb explosion. Several times he tried to say something, but she raised her hand to stop him. You promised, she said. If I don't say it all at once, I'll never finish. Jamie listened, his brow furrowed. With each phrase that the woman uttered, his heart broke more and more. When she was done, she nodded at Jamie. I thought you loved me, he whispered. How could I be so wrong? Both had tears in their eyes. Kelly's because she knew how much she was hurting her fiancé. You're not wrong. I love you more than anything in the world, she exclaimed. This is something that I just have to do for myself. I know it seems selfish, but if I don't, I'll always think about what I missed, and it could separate us in the future. But the same rules that apply to me apply to you. You haven't had many women. It will also give you the opportunity to broaden your horizons and knowledge. In the future, we will both become the best partners for each other. I don't need a better partner for the future. I love you just the way you are, Jamie said, and I don't want to expand my horizons and knowledge without you. Is that what you want from me? Jamie felt a mixture of anger, sadness, and confusion. He felt that the person he treasured the most in the world and trusted the most had lured him into a trap. Let me be clear. Let's see if I understood you correctly. You want to separate us both, to be able to meet and make love to other people for the next 6 months. Then we'll get back together, get married, and live happily ever after. Is that what you want? Seriously? He asked. Yes, that's right, she replied cheerfully, pleased that Jamie seemed to understand what she was suggesting. What if I refuse this ridiculous offer of yours? Jamie replied. I don't like it. I'm not going to share you with other men. The smile on Kelly's face turned to a frown in a millisecond. It wouldn't be like hanging out together. You'd have your dates, and I'd have mine. And so you could try to find a replacement for me, Jamie said quietly, looking directly at Kelly. No, no, no. I'm not looking for a replacement for you, Jamie. I love you. I want to marry you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, she said. You say you love me, but what you really want to do is rip my heart out of my chest and make love to a bunch of other men before we get married. It doesn't feel like love to me. I'm not a cheater. I'm not going to be a cheater, Kelly insisted. I don't believe you, Jamie said. I don't believe a word you say anymore. Was it your crazy idea, or did it come from one of your friends? I thought they liked me, he added. They like you. It's not from any of them. This is all my idea. I just think that I need to have more than 2 men in my entire life, so that in 10 years I won't be surprised. And I think I need to marry you, Kelly said. I'm only willing to have 3 women in my entire life, provided I end up staying with you. Jamie began. That's the point, Kelly interrupted. In the end, you will stay with me. We'll be together again in 6 months. I promise. Just as I trusted your promises now, he said. I'm still the same one you've been in love with for over 4 years. I'll be the same when it's over, she said, tears welling up in her eyes. Why don't you see it? No, you won't be like that. The minute you spread your legs for another man, you won't be the same. Not in my eyes. Never again, Jamie said, and a sad expression appeared on his face. Damn it, in my eyes you're not the same person anymore, just because you told me what you were going to do. Kelly was stunned by this turn of events. Jamie made it very clear that he didn't agree with Kelly's plan. She was willing to bet, damn it, she was willing to bet that her sweet, loving fiancé would give it to her. Yes, she knew that he would not necessarily be happy, but he loved her immensely, and they would succeed. She sat like that for about half an hour until she saw Jamie coming out of the bedroom with 2 suitcases. She was sitting at the kitchen table, picking at her plate when she saw him. Wait a minute. Where are you going? She whined, jumping up from her seat. I'm leaving. It's over between us, baby. Not long ago, I was ready to kill for you. Now it takes all my self-control not to kill you, Jamie said. You can't leave. We're getting married in 7 months. Kelly screamed. That's past tense, Kelly, Jamie said quietly. There will be no wedding. We can't be married anymore. The apartment is paid for by the end of the month. Find yourself a roommate or live alone. Anything. I'll figure something out for myself. Now you can make love to anyone you want and as many as you want. No, this wasn't supposed to happen. Don't you love me? Kelly cried. If you love me, you have to agree. Jamie looked sadly at his ex-fiancée. Where did she get this nonsense from? He asked himself. We were supposed to be a team. You and me. If you loved as much as you claim, you would never have said it. My little speech, Jamie said. Jamie could almost see the gears turning in Kelly's head. The color drained from her face. I think we don't need to turn to other people, she backed down, and tears flowed from her eyes. It was a stupid idea. I'm sorry. It was a stupid idea, and I'm sure you're sorry now. But you can't glue my heart together. You want what you want, and if you don't do it now, you'll do it when we get married. Do it behind my back, Jamie said. At least you've told me that now. We can get this over with before the wedding, before it gets expensive. Oh my God, Dad's going to kill us. He has already spent a lot of money, and I do not know how much of it can be returned, Kelly said. It's not my problem. It's because of the whim of Daddy's daughter, Jamie grumbled, making air quotes with his fingers. Please don't do this, Jamie, Kelly pleaded. Tell me you didn't have a backup plan, which, for God's sake, gave you the idea that I would let you use half the male population of this city and then marry you. Not half the male population, Kelly put in. Just a few guys here and there. It's much better this way. How many people do you have already? Jamie asked. No, I haven't done anything yet. I wouldn't do anything until I told you. Who do you take me for? Kelly asked. Jamie looked at the woman with raised eyebrows. Do you really expect me to answer that question? What is it? He asked in response. Tears poured from Kelly's eyes as Jamie carried his suitcases to the car and then returned to the apartment. I'll pick up everything I left in the next few days, he said. I wish you a good life. Please don't do this. I didn't do anything. I've never cheated on you. I won't. I promise, the woman sobbed. Jamie hesitated for a few seconds. He felt his stomach twist. God, he loved this woman. Now he couldn't get away from her fast enough. Jamie planned to spend a few days with his cousin Sam, who lived about a 15-minute drive from his apartment. As soon as he settled in with his cousin, he sat down at his laptop and updated 2 social media sites on which Kelly had created wedding pages. Dear friends, he wrote, the wedding of Kelly Reed and Jamie Breyer was canceled due to Kelly's expressed desire to make love to men who are not her fiancé. For more information, feel free to contact Kelly. The note was short and to the point. In it, the blame was placed directly on Kelly. Jamie didn't feel the need to be gentle with his ex-fiancée. He reread the note several times before sending it, and then made sure he changed his password to block access to Kelly's page. He repeated the procedure on the second site, and then turned off the computer. Despite asking people to contact his ex-fiancée, he knew that his phone would quickly start ringing, even though it was already midnight. The first call came in 4 minutes later, and it was from Jamie's friend. He ignored it, and several others that arrived shortly after it. The fourth call was from Kelly. He ignored it too, and a minute later received a message from her asking why he did what he did. I'm not going to hide this shit you've done from anyone. I didn't believe that you would tell everyone the truth. Don't contact me anymore. Have a happy life, he replied back before turning off the phone. Kelly sobbed at the kitchen table for several long minutes after Jamie left before she called Rosie, her closest friend in town. Rosie could barely make out her friend's words over the sobbing, but she knew what they were about. She called 3 other women who were supposed to be bridesmaids at Kelly's upcoming wedding, and 30 minutes later all 4 were in the apartment that Jamie and Kelly had previously occupied. So we can assume that Jamie completely misunderstood you and left, Karen said as the women drank wine in the living room. How can we help? I'm not sure you can, Kelly said. He not only left, but also canceled the wedding. He said he couldn't trust me anymore. I never thought that he would just leave without even talking to me. He said it was over between us as soon as I shared my plan with him. I told him I had changed my mind, but he said it was too late. I thought he loved me. I think I was wrong, Kelly said. No, you weren't wrong, but you hurt him as much as you could. Some men prefer all or nothing, Annie said. Or he didn't love you as much as you thought, Helen said. What's the old saying? If you love something, let it go. If it comes back, then it's yours. If not, then it was never yours. I'm saying it was never yours. Rosie and Karen nodded in agreement. Annie grimaced. What? Rosie asked. We all know that Jamie is a good guy. Let's face it, we've all known since Sunday that it could have gone this way, Annie said. Yeah, I'm not sure I could handle something like that if I was in that situation, Helen said. The women continued to talk, drink, and support Kelly. Just after midnight, her mobile phone rang. She hoped it was Jamie calling, but it was another friend who wanted to know what was going on with the wedding cancellation. Kelly was amazed that someone already knew about the cancellation. Damn it, I'm so fucked up. She screamed as she dialed the saved number on her phone. The person she called didn't answer. She typed a message and got a quick reply. She gasped when she read the message. She showed it to the others, who also gasped. It's probably a good thing it's so late. My parents are already asleep, otherwise they would have already called. My dad's going to have a heart attack when he finds out about this, Kelly said. Kelly woke up to the fact that her phone was ringing continuously. He called until the message was received, then called again. Even with a lack of sleep and a slight hangover, she knew, without even looking at the phone, who was on the other end of the line. Hi, Daddy, she said meekly when she finally picked up the phone. The next 10 minutes were some of the most unpleasant in a young woman's life. Her father found out about it from a friend who told him about the messages Jamie had posted on wedding websites. He went to both sites to verify this for himself before calling his daughter. Are you completely crazy? Who announces to their fiancé that they want to become a cheater before getting married? Her father yelled at her. Without even announcing it, who would do such a thing? You're kidding me. It wasn't quite like that, Daddy, Kelly said, without going into details, while her father was breathing heavily on the other end of the line. No? Then tell me what it was like, he grumbled. Okay, that's exactly how it was, she croaked. Hey, stop it, he shouted. Talk to her, Kathleen. Talk to her before I reach out and strangle her to death. Kelly heard her father hand the phone to her mother. Baby, what the hell were you thinking? Her mother said, and the disappointment in her voice practically carried over the phone line. We love Jamie. We thought you loved it too. I really am, Mom. I love him. That's true, but I need to learn more about life and about other men before I commit myself to one man forever, Kelly said. Couldn't you have done that before you agreed to be his wife? Some men, people like your father and, obviously, Jamie, think that because you agreed to marry them, then you belong to them forever. You're driving them crazy, aren't you? Her mother said. You screwed up pretty bad, baby. I'm not sure you can bring him back. It's a damn shame. We really liked him. You cost your mother and me a lot of money, and I can't even be mad at him, her father said, taking the phone. He's not that dumb. Damn it, girl. Her father sighed and hung up the phone. Since Kelly woke up, she tried to call Jamie. When she didn't get a reply, she left him a message asking if she could talk to him. Then she looked through the dozens of messages she had received since last night. Damn, she whispered aloud to no one. After a restless night's sleep, Jamie took a shower and went to work. He decided that immersing himself in work would help him take his mind off current problems. During the coffee break, he turned on his phone again and found about 50 messages. He ignored everything but one from his parents. The call was from his father's phone, but he knew that his father would answer the call in his office. He called and spent the next few minutes briefly telling his father about what had happened the day before. Are you sure you want to end it all this way? He asked his son seriously. The way you did it looks pretty corny. No second chances. No negotiations. Once and done. Simply. I'll never be able to trust her again, Dad. I'll always be waiting for her to want to do it again as soon as we get married. Or wondering if she's cheating on me when I'm not seeing her, Jamie said. I completely understand, son. Your mom and I won't tell you. Please forget her words, he said. We are always there if you need anything. You know that. Kelly's close friends, Rosie, Helen, and Karen, literally dragged her into town a week after Jamie dumped her. You can't cry alone in your dreary apartment, Rosie encouraged her. The four of them laughed, drank, and danced all night. Although Kelly had not planned to start dating men that evening, as the evening drew to a close and alcohol took over, she found herself snuggling up to her dancing partners. One of them, in particular, realized that the hot blonde seemed ready to go home with someone and made sure to be there when the time came. They say that the brain is the main organ, and Kelly was more than ready to enjoy her first new man in more than 4 years, and only the third in her life. She had a slight hangover and didn't know where she was when she woke up the next morning in someone else's bed with a man who wasn't Jamie. After lying in an embrace for a few minutes, they took a shower together and cleaned themselves up. Human. What the hell was his name? She kept wondering. She made them toast and coffee before he drove her home. It was a wonderful night. I would love to do it again, the man said, stopping the car in the parking lot of an apartment complex. Yes, me too, she replied shyly. Put your number in my phone? Baby. Then they kissed. It wasn't a quick kiss on the lips, but it wasn't as passionate as last night or early in the morning. It was a lover's kiss, and Kelly beamed as she thought about it. It was exactly what she had missed in those years when she was only with Jamie. To hell with him if he didn't want to play by her rules, she thought. Beautiful women like her don't have to play by anyone's rules. 2 weeks later, Kelly let another handsome man pick her up and take her home. She was enjoying the night again. When her date brought her home the next morning, she invited him to her apartment. In the first month after breaking up with Jamie, Kelly made love to 3 different men. As she told her friends over lunch during the week, she was enjoying her newfound freedom. What she didn't tell her friends was that she lacked connection with the men she made love to. Jamie has not returned to dating for several months. It was unusual for him, as he had been with Kelly for more than 4 years. 2 of his best friends from the company he worked for asked him out several times after work on Friday nights. For God's sake, you had a fiancé. I thought you were up to something, John Wheeler told Jamie one Friday night. You should forget about looking for Miss Right when we're fishing and look for someone right now. Miss Right is not what you need for a date. Thanks for the advice. I'll try to remember that, Jamie replied. 2 hours later, Jamie was sitting alone at the bar of a rather fashionable hotel restaurant and drinking a double shot of whiskey. The bar was almost empty, so Jamie was surprised when a pretty red-haired woman in a pretty yellow sundress sat down next to him. Jamie turned sideways and frankly stared at the woman while she ordered a glass of red wine. He assumed she was about 45 years old. Do you like what you see, young man? The woman asked, turning to face him after the wine was served to her. He smiled sheepishly. He didn't expect her to reach out and gently touch his cheek. You look like you have the weight of the whole world on your shoulders. Don't you want to talk about it? What is it? She asked with a slight hint of insolence. She deliberately took a deep breath, then exhaled, watching Jamie gaze at her in fascination. I suppose I should be grateful that I can still be interested in a man old enough to be my son, she said, shifting in her chair and slightly tugging at the hem of her dress in front of Jamie. Jamie told the woman, Naomi Ballinger, the whole story of his grief as they sat, drank, and had a snack. The woman turned out to be an excellent listener. She noticed his beaming smile every time he did this, and had to admit to herself that she liked the young man's attention to her body. It was just before midnight when Jamie wished the woman a good night. She surprised him a second time when she kissed him gently on the lips. I would really like you to come up to my room and stay the night, she said. You know you got me from the first breath, Jamie said. The woman giggled lyrically. Jamie paid both bills, then took her outstretched hand and escorted her to the hotel elevator. Naomi looked at his young face and licked her lips. She saw the look in his eyes and just understood. You've never done this before, have you? The woman asked. This is the first time for me, he whispered, blushing. Then I'll make sure your first time is the best, she whispered back. The next morning, when Jamie woke up with Naomi in his arms, he broke into a smile. Her hair was a mess, her makeup was worn off, and he thought she looked even better than when he met her at the bar the night before. He stared at her for several minutes until she sleepily opened her eyes. Oh my God, I must look terrible. When was the last time you woke up with a 46-year-old woman? If I had to guess, then probably never, she said softly. Jamie leaned over to the woman and gave her a searing kiss. "If this is hell, then sign me up," he said happily. "You look wonderful. I wish you could, but my flight back to Wichita is at 1 o'clock in the afternoon," she replied. "If I were 20 years younger, you'd never get rid of me," Naomi said. "You're a godsend, young man. Don't change for any woman. They have to change for you." Annie Leonard also had Jamie's phone number, but he hadn't returned calls or texts from Kelly or any of her close friends since he broke up with his ex-fiancée. More than the others, the tall, lithe woman desperately wanted to talk to him. She also had no idea where he had moved to. So in desperation, she came to his company's office about 4 months after the breakup. Jamie was surprised and angry to see Annie waiting for him at the reception desk when he was called and announced that he had a visitor. Jamie gave his company's secretary a list of names of people whose calls were banned, but he never thought that Kelly or any of her friends would have the courage to actually show up at his office. "Which one? Why the hell are you bothering me where I work, Annie? I'm not going to put up with this," he began. "Trust me, it's not what you think," the blonde interjected. "Can we go somewhere private and talk?" His face softened a little, and he told the receptionist that he and the guest would leave for a few minutes at a diner located down the street. He motioned her to the front door, and they walked quickly and silently to a diner located a few minutes away. Jamie was always amazed that a beautiful woman like Kelly had a whole bunch of pretty friends. He jokingly called these 5 the coven of the pretty ones. Jamie believed that Annie was a tall blonde with an athletic build and a wonderful personality. He considered her the most down-to-earth of the group. "What the hell is so important that you interrupted my work day, Annie?" "What is it?" he asked sharply when the waitress took their coffee order and left. "I'm not going to change my mind about Kelly's suggestion." "I'm not asking you to change your mind," she replied. "You probably haven't read any of the messages I've sent you, but I think you're right and she's wrong. She treated you like shit. That's why I called at first. But now I'm here for another reason. Should you think about dating me?" Jamie's head jerked up as if someone had pulled his hair. He looked straight into Annie's green eyes and saw nothing in them but hope. "You're serious, aren't you?" "What is it?" he asked softly. "Absolutely serious. I always thought you were a great guy, and since neither of us is dating anyone at the moment, I kind of thought, good. Maybe," she said. The woman's breathing was ragged. Her face was flushed. Perhaps if he hadn't been engaged to one of Annie's closest friends, he would have agreed, Jamie thought. It didn't seem right, even though several friends had told him that Kelly had been dating several of his closest friends in recent weeks. Correction, by former friends. "I can't, Annie. I just can't. It's not right, even though Kelly and I are no longer engaged," Jamie said. "You know she is," Annie began. "Yes, I know a lot more about Kelly and her adventures than I would like. But this is about her. But I won't be like that." "I'm sorry, Annie," Jamie said. "Me too, even more than you think," Annie said. "Can we at least be friends again? You know, I'll call you sometimes, and you will answer. And you'll call me sometimes. As long as it doesn't escalate into stories about Kelly. You don't tell me anything about her, and you don't tell her anything about me. Do you understand?" Jamie commented. "I would really like that. I don't need to be in the middle," she said. Fred Waring, Kelly's direct supervisor at the international telecommunications firm where she worked, was an energetic and charismatic man in his early 50s. He's been hitting on Kelly almost since she started working in the office. She gently refused the man, referring to her engagement when it was a reality, and told him that after the breakup she was not ready. Apparently, she was finally ready after a barbecue hosted by the firm on the 4th of July. It was also in Fred Waring's favor that Kelly hadn't made love in over a week. When she lived with Jamie, they did it almost every day, and often several times a day. Another advantage in Fred's favor was that he was married. She believed that if she was going to have an affair with her boss, then his family gave her a way out when she wanted to end the relationship. A month later, Kelly and 4 of her closest friends celebrated the day she wasn't married, the day she was originally supposed to marry Jamie. He and Rosie organized an evening that began at the bar, where she and Jamie visited from time to time. All 4 of Kelly's friends understood perfectly well what this woman sacrificed in order to have more partners before marriage. 3 out of 4, at least partially, supported her decision, although they had concerns about the fact that she had abandoned a man whom they all considered almost perfect. Now, 7 months later, Kelly has increased the number of her partners from 2 to 24, and at least her friends would have to admit that her self-confidence was sky-high. Rosie moved in with Kelly about a month after Jamie left, so Kelly was no longer alone in the apartment. Her successes had strengthened her self-confidence so much that not only did she stop thinking about Jamie often, but when she did, she usually thought of him as the villain in the story. The women seemed to be having a great time, bursting into raucous laughter from time to time. The 5 women at the table opposite the bar were talking loudly enough for everyone to hear, including the man who was celebrating the same day, although obviously for a different reason. Although he asked his friends not to tell him about Kelly's actions, he still knew too much. He knew of at least 6 friends, now ex-friends, with whom she had made love, among more than a dozen pen pals. If he knew about this amount, he was sure that there were many more things that he did not know about. He calmly drank his single malt whiskey, enjoying the taste. He smiled to himself, grateful, at least, that she had expressed her desire to become a cheater before they got married, and not after. We need to take all the good things from where it is possible, he thought. 2 days later, Jamie called Annie. I saw you at Laughlin's last night, she said. I didn't come up to you because I didn't want the others to know you were there. I wasn't trying to be a snob. I thought you probably didn't want them to know that you were celebrating too. I definitely didn't have as much fun as you ladies, Jamie said. You celebrated our wedding day? Or another notch on Kelly's bedpost? If it were anyone else, I'd say I'm hearing bad news. But from what we both saw, I'd say you were right. I've never seen anyone turn from practically a virgin to a Kardashian wannabe so quickly, Annie said. But in this case, we celebrated a wedding that never happened. You know, she's still mad at you for not letting her. Renaissance, I think it would be more correct to say. Jamie chuckled. Renaissance. That's a great idea, Annie, he said. Did you just call to say hello? Or is there something I can do for you? I need a favor, Jamie, she said, somewhat hesitantly. No, I'm not going to date Kelly again, Jamie chuckled. No, I said service, not catastrophic event, Annie said. Okay, then what is this favor? He asked. We are planning a family wedding, and my cousin Brooke needs a date for the celebration. I thought you'd be perfect for the role. You're handsome, you can have a decent conversation, and you can eat without drooling, she said. Damn, I seem like the perfect match to you, Jamie said. So what does your cousin look like? About 25 years old, blonde hair, blue eyes, something like a bookworm. She also has a wonderful character, Annie said. Wow. Whoa. Slow down. The old, outstanding personality trick? Really? Jamie said. Seriously. She's really great. You'll like her, Annie said enthusiastically. Jamie sighed heavily. He realized that he had been tricked. Good. You caught me. When and where? Jamie asked. Jamie's eyes almost popped out when he met Brooke at Annie's house a month later, before going to the wedding. And she has a wonderful character? Jamie asked with a smile. Oh yes. I wouldn't lie to you, Annie replied enthusiastically. Annie wasn't really lying to Jamie. Brooke was a wonderful person. In addition to being a really beautiful blonde with bright blue eyes, full lips that beckoned to kisses, and a curvy body. It took all of Jamie's willpower not to drool throughout the evening. Hey Jamie, keep your cool. Did you really wait that long? Annie giggled at one point during the evening. No, but I was expecting it. You know? An outstanding personality, Jamie said. You owe me, Jamie. You owe me a favor. Yes, it is, he agreed. Brooke Martin was a 26-year-old junior accountant who, until a few months ago, had an exceptional relationship with a man she considered the one, until he got drunk at a party and then hit her several times. The breakup of the relationship. The bruises went away, but Brooke became wary of men and relationships with them. She only went on a couple of dates after the incident. She wasn't sure if she would go to a blind date wedding, but she was sure that her cousin would find her a good guy, the male equivalent of an outstanding personality. She was very surprised when a handsome and fit Jamie appeared. Was it just a coincidence, or was it bad karma? Jamie wondered when Kelly showed up at his coffee table a few months later. He was on the run for work, and went into a cafe to drink a salted caramel latte and eat a bagel. Although he usually drank black coffee, Kelly introduced him to lattes when they were together, and he sometimes drank it when he was in the mood. "Hey, stranger, do you mind if an old friend sits with you?" Kelly asked. He knew it was petty, but Jamie looked back and looked behind the woman and then back at her. "Aren't you funny?" she asked sarcastically. "May I sit down?" He motioned her to a chair, giving her tacit permission, and began to chew on a bagel. He looked at her, noting that she was still as beautiful as when they were together. She caught his eye and smiled inwardly. That's a good sign, she thought. They sat in silence until Jamie finished chewing. "You look, that's great, Kelly. How are you?" Jamie asked. "It's been better, but you know it," the woman said, trying not to sound too bitter. She lowered her eyes for a second to pull herself together. Then she looked straight into Jamie's eyes. "Have you met with anyone seriously?" "What is it?" she asked. Kelly saw Jamie's eyes flash. He wondered what he could tell her, choosing the version of the truth. "I've been seeing a woman quite regularly for the last couple of months. I have a wonderful personality," he said, immediately guessing what Kelly would think. "How many guys are you dating?" "What is it?" he asked, and the words barely escaped his lips before he realized what he was asking. The woman shuddered. She knew she deserved it, but she hadn't expected Jamie to be so blunt. "I'm not seriously dating anyone right now," she replied. Jamie replied, taking another bite of his bagel. Kelly was surprised that she couldn't read the expression in Jamie's eyes. He had once been an open book to her. "You know, I had more than enough time to gain the experience that I thought I needed. I think if we get back together, we can be as good as we were before," she said. "I'm glad you got the experience you thought you needed," Jamie said. "I never wanted to hold you back. I also gained some experience during this time, although I definitely did not want it, and still am not sure that I needed it. Why don't we try again, Jamie?" "We had such a good time together," Kelly said. "We had a really good time together, Kelly. That's what hurt me so much," Jamie said. "I loved you with every fiber of my being, but you didn't love me as much. I didn't have to make love to other women before we got married to be satisfied. But you said quite loudly that you needed something more than me before you could be satisfied enough to settle down." "Okay, I screwed up," she admitted, "but that's in the past now. Everything was fine with us. We could go back to that again." It was Jamie's turn to flinch. If even half of what he'd heard about Kelly's behavior since they broke up was true, he doubted she'd ever be able to be faithful to just one man again. He knew that she was still being treated for venereal disease. "No, we can't," Jamie said. "You cut out my heart and then trampled on it. There's no way I'm going to forget this. If I can't forget, I'll never be able to forgive. Never." The woman's eyes clouded over before she shook her head to clear them. "Well, your loss," she said carelessly. "If you ever change your mind, I'm still in the same place." 2 years later, Annie was the perfect bride at her wedding. The bridesmaids were 4 of her best friends. The reception, which was attended by about 200 people, was just beginning when Kelly noticed Jamie sitting at a table with a beautiful blonde. "What is he doing here?" she asked Annie. Annie followed Kelly's gaze to Jamie. She smiled broadly, but at the same time awkwardly. "I'm still friends with him, Kelly," she replied. "Just because you dumped him doesn't mean I dumped him. Besides, he's married to my cousin Brooke. It's been over a year now. How could I miss it?" Kelly asked. Annie smiled and leaned over to her new husband Greg, giving him a sensual kiss. When the best man began his speech, they headed to the front of the hall. "Did you know that Jamie got married?" Kelly asked the other 3 bridesmaids. They all shook their heads negatively. "It's none of our business," Karen said. "Besides, why else would you care? Since you broke up with him, you've had more love than all of us put together. Obviously, you're moving on, etc., etc." Rosie and Helen giggled and rolled their eyes. They left with their cavaliers. An hour later, Kelly looked up from her seat at the bride's table and saw Jamie and his wife standing in front of her. "Kelly, I'd like to introduce you to my wife, Brooke. Brooke is an old friend of mine. To be precise, Kelly Reed's ex-fiancée," Jamie said. "She's the one." Kelly's jaw dropped as she stared at a beautiful woman in a tight, short, expensive blue dress with diamonds dripping from her ring finger, neck, and earlobes. Jamie also looked immaculate in his expensive navy pinstriped suit, and his smile looked casual and sincere. I don't want to sound frivolous, but I think I should thank you, Brooke said. Well, you and my cousin. When she said she would introduce me to a nice guy, I thought, great. And then this man showed up at my door. Kelly briefly thought about reaching out and hitting the smug woman standing in front of her. Then she realized that what she considered complacency was the confidence that she had made the right decision in choosing a spouse. I'd like to say that you're welcome, but honestly, I can't. I screwed up a lot, and she took the love of a good man for granted. I may have loved him, but obviously I loved myself more. End.